Welcome to the Shannon Plan. This is episode 88, episode Jordan Matthews. You guessed it, and I'm sure he'll be back. All right, as always, I'm joined by Akash. Akash, it's 49ers, and we always talk 49ers, and they are very good at giving us content. Just when you think, the team doesn't have a first-round pick, there's nothing to talk about, they find ways to stay in the news. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I mean, just for those of you that are on the live stream here on YouTube,
buddy,
rocking the Deebo Samuel wide receiver RB1's hoodie. Shout out Warriors World. But I think everyone's talking about this guy, right?
Man, well, ESPN's Adam Schefter, he was on NFL Live on Tuesday, and here's what he said. He said, quote, listen, San Francisco wants to pay Deebo Samuel, but Deebo Samuel was the one who scrubbed the 49ers off his social media page. Deebo Samuel was the one who made it known that he was the one who wanted to move on. San Francisco would pay Deebo Samuel today, tomorrow, the next day. It's not hard to figure out what a contract would look like. We've seen that some of the top numbers in the league. This right now is Deebo Samuel not wanting to get a deal done. It's not San Francisco willing to do a deal. Deebo Samuel is the one who put everything to a halt right now. Just reading that, listening to that, people are saying, oh my goodness, the 49ers this. If that doesn't scream agenda, if that doesn't scream, hey, this is coming from Jed York, John Lynch, whoever in the 49ers organization, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's maddening that, we aren't able to see through this type of propaganda, but let's talk about it because we can't ignore it. And where there's smoke, there's fire. I'm sure, both sides have their own story, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. And we'll get to the family members chiming in because it wouldn't be the offseason if a relative didn't have their say in it. So, okay, how much of this, I guess, let me just ask you this. Are you buying that this is, Deebo Samuel wants out?
To some extent. I mean, Adam Schefter on a random Tuesday, 9 days before the draft, just comes on ESPN and is like, you know what? Deebo Samuel is the one that doesn't want to do a deal. And it makes sense to some extent, right? Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, we've been talking about this for weeks. They're all up for extensions. They're all second-round picks. They're all represented by the same agent. They all have, similar numbers, similar resumes. They're all going to get paid roughly in the same ballpark. Is there a chance that the 49ers and Deebo Samuel are so far apart in negotiations that Deebo Samuel's like, nah. I don't even want to continue with negotiations? Possibly. Is there a chance that Deebo Samuel probably heard what the offers are for A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf and is like, those guys are getting way more on their initial offers than I am from San Francisco? Also a possibility. So, this was always going to be a contentious negotiation. The wide receiver market exploded after the Christian Kirk, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill deals. And Deebo Samuel, just put up one of the greatest seasons we've seen for a 49ers wide receiver. And the 49ers approach negotiations extremely patiently. And they slow play this stuff. And so this was bound to get contentious. And it's a complicated negotiation. I just hope it doesn't end with Deebo Samuel on a different team, even if that's a possibility at the end of all of this.
Yeah, that seems like that was the narrative. That's what Schefter was trying to get across. Like, hey, if a trade happens, it's on Deebo because he's the one who didn't want to get a contract done. What Schefter conveniently left out was the numbers. Of course, he's not going to mention the numbers, but we don't know what Deebo was offered. We don't know if the 49ers, and we talked a little bit about this before we got on, we don't know if the 49ers went to Deebo and said, hey, here's a $30 million guaranteed contract with a bunch of fluff in it. Here's the deal. Sign it. You're going to love it. Knowing, as we just talked about, knowing that A.J. Brown is going to get paid handsomely, knowing that, and even Terry McLaurin probably who's down the line, but A.J. Brown as well, he knows what they're going to get. And we just saw Tyreek Hill get paid. We just saw Devontae Adams get paid. $30 million guaranteed. And this is hypothetically, obviously, but you would have to imagine if Deebo is unwilling to sign a contract right now, that's likely due to the team just putting an offer in front of him that is disrespectful. And we have to acknowledge that. There's no way that Deebo would shut down without, having a deal like that. So it's very media-y. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so here's the difference, right? The Niners always do this. They did this with George Kittle. They probably did this with Fred Warner. They've done this with all the guys that they've had to extend. The difference here is Deebo Samuel probably, knows what other offers are for players in his sort of caliber, right? A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin. Like, he has an idea of what these guys are probably getting because they share the same agent. Not McLaurin, but the other two guys. And then the third thing is the wide receiver market has, like, completely exploded. So the Niners can't come in like they normally do because the numbers are probably so far off that Deebo probably shut down or, I don't think it's a coincidence that he took everything down off of social media. Like, we joked about it a couple weeks ago, but it feels like the more we get into this, the weirder it gets and the more validity there is to why he may have done that.
Yeah, and it all circles back to the first free agent deal. I guess the real free agent deal that broke the market, Christian Kirk and the Jags. So naturally, Trent Baalke screwing the 49ers once again. Okay. Let's talk always. So both sides, they don't really have a reason to budge just because it's April. And we just talked about what the potential offers would be, whether it's $30 million. I wonder what Deebo wants. I wonder what he's looking to get. I wonder if he has a number in his. Well, we know that him and his agent have a number that they want to attain in this deal.
$25 million, but we don't want it, baby.
Yeah, like he actually came out and said it. So there's no real guessing games to be had. I wonder what the 49ers are, how high the 49ers are willing to go. But let's talk about his brother because, as we said, there's always a twist in these stories. And on Tuesday, his brother, I don't remember what his name was, but
Taekwon,
there we go. Taekwon, there we go. When it was on Facebook, and he was replying to, I believe, Brandon Graham of the SF Niners, who does good work. And he said, yeah, well, we requested a trade. That lasted like 37 minutes. And then, of course, he backpedaled like no other and said he was just joking.
Backpedal like that peak serious. Darrelle Revis.
Yeah, baby. That's usually how these things go. But the funny part is when he did say that, he made it seem like this was really like he was dead serious. And it did feel like there was some validity to it just because everything we've seen, like Deebo shut down. Deebo doesn't want the contract. Deebo requested a trade. That makes sense. And the reason it makes sense is because I think it's important to know that. So this is Deebo's first time being in a negotiation. So he's going from his first contract to his second contract, his rookie deal, to a contract that's probably going to be 10 to 20 times more than what he was originally signed when he was drafted by the 49ers. With that in mind, knowing what he's worth, knowing his value, if he's like, hey, if they're not going to give me what I'm worth, I don't want to be here. So when you see his brother say, oh, we requested a trade, on the surface, you would think, yeah, he's probably just playing around. But again, there's always some truth to that. When he walked it back, whether that's Deebo texting him, hey, man, you're not supposed to put that out there. We don't want that to be known. You could see that. But do you think there's any truth to Deebo wanting a trade?
I can see that. I mean, I don't know what the relationship between him and his brother is, but with the swiftness that he walked that back, I imagine he was being honest on Facebook. He wasn't sure if it would, if that would circulate out. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's everywhere, right? It gets picked up and it's blown up on social media. And I certainly think that's a possibility. It makes sense given what Adam Schefter said earlier on Tuesday afternoon, that the 49ers are trying to get a deal done. They'd pay Deebo today, tomorrow, and the next day. But Deebo doesn't want to get a deal done. So it feels like there's a little bit of narrative controlling going on in the media, which we talked about before we hit record. And so it's like they're kind of greasing the road before a trade even occurs. And we saw this with DeForest Buckner, right, 2 years ago. So there should be no surprise that the 49ers would take a team MVP, which is what DeForest was 2 years ago. They probably started contract negotiations in the same way, probably realized that they weren't even close. Also realized they had other guys to pay and, decided to move DeForest Buckner. Difference was DeForest, and I'm not saying Deebo Samuel, A+ character, high character, all that stuff. DeForest Buckner just different in terms of he didn't say anything publicly, didn't do anything on social media. His family didn't particularly say anything. It's been a little bit different with Deebo, right? He's said stuff. He's liked stuff. He's had his cryptic tweets. He's removed stuff off of social media. So it's been a little bit more public. So I think fans and general media are more aware of what's going on. Whereas with Buckner, I think it all just happened behind the scenes. And the first real set of news that came out was, boom, he's traded for a first-round pick. Whereas I think it's been more public with Deebo, and so fans are just a little bit more aware of the process and kind of what's going on behind the scenes.
So Jonathan Perez just said Deebo's brother is just as immature as Deebo, and I don't think that's fair to Deebo. I feel like just natural human emotion to react like this. And was he a little bit extra by, removing all the 49ers from his social media? Sure, whatever. But, again, he has every right to feel slighted if the deal wasn't up to par. In today's age, these guys act through the social media. We see multiple players do it all the time. AJ Brown just did it with the Titans either yesterday or the day before. So I don't feel like he should be labeled as immature for reacting. He has every right. It's his emotion. It's human nature. When you're upset about something, to react. And just in today's age, these guys are going to do that through social media. It just so happens that we are, we keep a close eye on it. So we are the ones really reacting. So if anything, we're the ones who are the immature ones just by just relying on their every move and just making sure that we see what they do in social media. Okay, let's talk about that narrative that you just mentioned. So it's pretty clear that the 49ers are trying to get out in front of this narrative in case Deebo is traded. Can you talk about what that narrative is?
Exactly. So I think when you're a team of the 49ers stature, you don't ever want it to seem like a player wants out of your organization, right? It just sets a bad precedent in terms of future, players that are up for extension, free agents, etc. You never want it to seem like, hey, that player wanted out, and so we succumbed and we traded him, right? You want the public narrative to be that, okay, well, we tried everything we could. That player didn't necessarily want to oblige, wanted to be paid X, Y, and Z. So we decided that, we were able to recoup value for him. So we traded him. And that's kind of how the DeForest Buckner deal kind of went, right? High character guy, team MVP, Lana Eshmont award winner, all pro, DeForest Buckner. But we got a first round pick, made sense. We're able to pay Eric Armstead, George Kittle, Jimmy Ward. So we did the trade, got Javon Kinlaw. That part hasn't worked out, but the trade in a vacuum at the time made sense. And I think they're just kind of setting up the road in case that happens. I'm not saying that they're going to trade Deebo. My thing is the draft is 8 days away now. It's Wednesday, right? It's next Thursday. And if you are going to trade Deebo and you realize, hey, I'm not even going to get remotely close on a contract offer to what he wants, you have to figure out in the next 8 days what trade package you can get in return for Deebo Samuel. It makes no sense to trade him in May, June, July, for some future draft pick,
right?
Based on you don't even know where those picks are going to be, right? I know a lot of the analytics guys talk about it, but with future draft assets, there's always a loss because you don't exactly know what the picks are because you don't know what the team's record is, so on and so forth. Whereas what the picks are this year, what the draft class is. And I'm sure you've done evals on all the top prospects. So I think if you're the 49ers, you have to do your due diligence in the next 8 days, figure out what you can get for Deebo Samuel, figure out how you would use those picks and build your roster out, and then make a decision accordingly. And I think that's what's going on behind the scenes right now with Shanahan, Lynch, all these guys.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If you made a trade with the Eagles finished 9-8. You would have never thought that they would have finished above 500. Same with the Dolphins. The Dolphins finished 9-8. The Raiders finished 10-7. There are a bunch of teams that tend to. The Bengals are a great example. They finished 10-7, and nobody in the world thought they would exceed their win expectation by over 5 wins. So that's a good point about future draft capital. Another big part is why you don't want to wait till after the draft if you were to move Deebo. How do you replace Deebo? If you move on from him without any draft picks, now you go into the draft, or now you go into the regular season with Brandon Ayuk, with Juwan Jennings as your wide receiver 2. Is that what you really want to do? Are you going to expect Ray McLeod to be this wide receiver 3? It seems like he's going to have a role, but expecting him to take on that big of a role without anybody to back him up, and it just seems like you are really, really asking for it, or putting a lot on Trey Lance, putting a lot on Kyle Shanahan, and that's not something you want to do. That's not how their offense runs. It seems like, well, we know that their offense ran through Deebo last year, so A lot goes on, but let's talk about the potential trade. Let's say, hypothetically, Deebo's on the block. The Jets make the most sense because Robert Saleh, we know that they're desperate
Michael
for a
Ford.
wide receiver. Yeah, that the Jets have the 49ers offensive coaching staff there. Like they went from here to New York. Okay, so with that said, the Jets have 2 first-round picks. They didn't offer a first-round pick for Tyreek Hill, so it's unlikely that they're going to offer a pick for Deebo. They are very familiar with Deebo. They know Deebo's skill set better than anybody outside of the 49ers. He is younger. That is a fair point. Durability has to factor in here, as well as what he's done before 2021. So 2019 and 2020, you could make an argument that 2021 was an anomaly. Maybe he's on a projection. Maybe that's just who Deebo's going to be when he's healthy. I'm sure the truth is somewhere in the middle. Like, he's probably not going to be a guy who flirts with 2,000 yards, but he's also a lot better than what he showed, just because he hasn't been healthy. Okay. With that said, what are we looking at as far as potential trade packages? You know what they offered Tyreek Hill. It was two second rounders and a third rounder. Is that true?
Yeah, it was. So the Jets offered picks 35, 38, and 69. So that's 2 second rounders, 2 high second rounders. I think it's their own second rounder, and then the Seahawks second rounder in the Jamal Adams trade, and then their own third round pick in that trade. And I think the Chiefs accepted that trade, right? I think they let Tyreek Hill decide which team he wanted to go to. So the Chiefs thought that was fair value. And if you look at the draft value chart, I think all those 3 picks put together is less valuable than pick 10. So it makes sense why, the Jets didn't offer pick 10. I think the problem is their first round picks are just too high. I think they pick 4 and they pick 10. And I don't know if they'd offer either one of those in a Deebo Samuel trade. It would be great. I think the 49ers would take it in a heartbeat if they got pick 10 or pick 4 in return for Deebo Samuel, but I don't think they would. Would you take that offer? The 35, 38, and 69?
Yeah, that's tough. So I would want a first rounder just because you get that 5th year option. And naturally you're going to have, you're going to have a pool of better players, even if it is, in this case, you'd have your pick of the litter. You could have essentially any wide receiver you want. I don't know if we're going to see a wide receiver taken before that 10th pick. So in that situation, like, give me the first rounder. But in a situation where you're in the second round, think about it. By then you're missing all of the receivers. So the likelihood of any of the top receivers falling to that 35, 34 pick, this is not going to happen. Like, at best, a team passes up on Jahan Dotson, who from Penn State is a guy that I really like, but I think even he's going to go in the first round. I think we're going to see a run on wide receivers in the first round. So that would make me leery. Yeah, right. Like, it's a very valuable position. Mm-hmm. With that said, I don't know that I would, because if you trade Deebo, you need to replace Deebo. Like, there's no way around that. There is not going to be a player in the draft who's going to be a 1-for-1 replacement for Deebo. But in the second round, there's not a receiver who's, on the same planet as Deebo. So I don't think I would. I know that you could get, a safety, an edge rusher, potentially a center. So you could make your roster stronger, but you just lose so much firepower by moving on from Deebo. So I don't know that I would. But if it's the first rounder, if it's maybe the Chiefs come calling for one of their late first rounders, or maybe a pair of their first rounders, because again, they're desperate too, and they need a game changer like Tyreek, and that's Deebo. So if I'm getting 28, 29, so I have that 5th year option, I have, perhaps I'm getting a Chris Olave or, a Jahan Dotson, a guy who can create after the catch. Who knows what other wide receivers are available there. So going from 28, 29, yes, as opposed to 35, no, I don't think I will. What about you?
I probably wouldn't take the Jets offer for Tyreek Hill either. 35, 38, and 69. I don't think I would. I would want a first round pick, right? Devontae Adams got netted a first round and a second round pick, and those were late picks, right? I think they were in the 20s. I think the first round pick was in the 20s, and then the subsequent second round pick was also at the back end of the second round. But he netted a first and a second round pick. And I think Deebo Samuel being younger, I get he's not as good of a player as, Devontae Adams has been over the last, 3-4 years. But I think at the very least, he should be able to net that. So I would be looking for at least that, Rob Guerrero, our producer, dropped in the chat that Howard Eskin, who covers the Eagles, wrote that the Jets offered pick 10 for DK Metcalf, and I think the Seahawks said no. So I think if the 49ers got the same offer, if the Jets said, we'll give you pick 10, you give us Deebo Samuel, what would you say?
Yeah. Yeah. Where do I sign? How can I accept that? So Deebo,
you could use 10 to trade back, right? You could trade back into the teens, you get another second or third round pick, and then boom, you're cooking with gas.
10, you can turn 10 to like 16, 48, and 7. Like you can really recoup some picks and some value in that sense. And then you can probably get a receiver who you would have taken at 10 in the teens, and they're probably going to be a lot of the same, and still come away with a center or an edge rusher or a safety in the second round and still be able to have your picks at 61. So with 10, 100%, because I'm getting the best wide receiver in the draft. I'm getting the best wide receiver with a 5th-year option with Kyle Shanahan, who I know will create and make space for this guy. And all he needs to do is be able to create for himself after the catch. So he's probably going to be a high caliber wideout from the jump. So yeah, if it's 10, and I don't think there's anybody higher than me or higher on Deebo Samuel than me. I am well aware of how talented he is. He is a superstar, but you have to trust the organization. You have to trust that in this sense, you will be able to get out of the 10th overall pick, or if they trade back 16, whatever it is, you'll be able to get what you were able to get out of Deebo during the first 4 years. So with that in mind, yep, I'm going to take that 10th. What about you?
I would 100% take it too. And these are the conversations that are going on inside the 49ers building, right? It'd be naive to just be like, pay Deebo Samuel whatever he wants, or just to say, trade him, I don't even want to pay him, right? You have to kind of work out all the potential scenarios and see what's best for your team, right? What is the highest trade package I can get for Deebo Samuel? What can I do with, the 10th overall pick or whatever package you end up getting from all the teams that are potentially making offers, and then decide, okay, is that worth it? Like, what am I going to get there, right? And is that total value worth losing Deebo? Or do you just bite the bullet, continue to negotiate with Deebo and see if you can get closer on a deal? And I think that's exactly what's happening behind the scenes. And at the same time, you kind of have to publicly set the narrative, like, okay, this is what's happening, right? And so we'll see. I think it's gonna be really interesting over the next 8 days. I do think if he does get traded, I think it happens before the draft. Or
it has to, right? Just because of everything we've talked about. If you're going to replace Deebo, if you're going to trade Deebo, you want to be able to replace him in this draft. So is there a deadline? Have the 49ers given Deebo and his agent a hard deadline? Hey, by Tuesday, so that gives him a few days, 48 hours to work out a potential trade with the Jets or with another team in the first round who's looking for a wide receiver. So we keep mentioning the Jets, but there are a ton of teams who need a wide receiver, who are looking at wide receivers. So who knows? A team could come
Eagles,
out of nowhere.
Packers, Chiefs.
For sure. They're not going to probably trade him.
They're not going to trade him to the Packers, but
the Cardinals need a wide receiver. They're not going to trade Deebo to the Cardinals because Deebo would terrorize the 49ers if that were true. But again, yeah, there are plenty of options out there outside of the Jets. So yeah, it'll be fascinating to see. All right, let's turn the page here. Let's talk about Alex Mack. So Eric Branch of the Chronicle, he mentioned that Alex Mack has been, just thinking about retiring. And it makes sense. We talked about it last week where the man has been overseas getting married, probably not thinking about football. I don't believe he was one of the players at the voluntary workouts that just started on Tuesday. 49ers, they were in the same situation a couple years ago. Joe Staley, he decided to retire the week of. They knew about it. In this sense, 49ers aren't going to be able to replace their retiring center, or as it was Joe Staley, with a Trent Williams. Like there aren't Trent Williams just floating around there. So with that in mind, the 49ers they have some options here. They could elect to replace Mack in the draft. They could roll with what's on the roster, or they could wait till after the draft and just go into the free agency market. J.C. Tretter is a very popular name. He's the NFLPA's president, or I don't know if he is anymore. I think he's a treasurer now. Okay. He's a popular name. He's been around for a while. I don't want to say he's a great player because PFF grades him high, but I don't know what that's really saying. He has great stats, like very good stats when you look at him. So when I bring up PFF, so they had him graded as one of the top 3 pass protectors for 4 straight seasons. Treader, he has not missed a start since 2017, which matters. Like, that is a big deal. He has also only given up he's given up no more than 2 sacks since 2017. Also another big deal. Brandon Thorne, who's like the OL expert, here's what he had to say when I reached out to him and just asked him about what Treader is and what he brings to the table. So he said, I've heard his body holding up is a legit question. I always seen him as a solid middle of the pack starter with an above average elements to his game. Those are mainly handling the pre-snap phase, which you need, especially with a rookie quarterback. Pre-snap phase and being able to sort out games and blitzes quickly, and pretty good in the zone run game, which 49ers run, but also can effectively pull when needed to. Not overly powerful or strong, not great in one-on-one area, but when healthy is reliable and functional. And really, that's exactly what they need.
That's what they need.
Yeah, they need a guy who can stay healthy, who will be able to take some of the pre-snap reads, whether it's, who's coming, who's blitzing, sort out protections for Trey Lance. That way Lance doesn't have to add another thing to his plate. So Treader seems like the guy who would make the most sense. You get a veteran, you get a guy who's been there, you get a guy who's not going to miss any starts and who knows what he's doing. He's been around and has seen a lot of the NFL defenses, so won't be confused. That's an option. It doesn't mess with their comp picks, so that also matters. And Treader's also going to be a guy who's not going to break the bank. Yep. So you don't have to worry about signing him to this 4-year, $60 million contract. That's not going to be a worry for the 49ers. Another option is Daniel Brunskill, who has been reliable in a sense that he's been available. So Brunskill, he's been a little bit of a punching bag for 49ers Twitter just because, we see the plays where he goes against an upper echelon defensive tackle, such as Aaron Donald, and he gets whooped. But to be fair, there aren't many guards in the NFL who can stay with, some of the top 3 techs in the NFL. So I don't really blame Brunskill for that. When the 49ers, over the course of 60 snaps or over the course of a 10-game stretch, Brunskill's fine. You have to imagine if he moves to center, now he's just sort of the helper. You don't have to worry about him being one-on-one. He gets to help guys in the running game. He gets to peel off. So I feel like that would be better. And Kyle Shanahan has pretty much lauded, Brunskill's versatility for being able to play a bunch of different positions, you would think. So he has experience too. So he's played over 500 snaps in the NFL at center, which pretty much is the equivalent to like 9 or 10 starting games. So he's been there. So that matters. Okay. That would mean, though, you have Brunskill, and we're assuming that Jalen Moore and Aaron Banks are the guards next to him. So that is a lot of inexperience. But the other option, the alternative, is you're drafting a rookie. And Cam Jurgens from Nebraska is a popular name just because the team has met with him. Man, we talked about this a little bit before. Cam Jurgens has a high ceiling. There is no doubt I think he's going to be a very good player. It's also – it feels like we're jumping the gun just to assume that the 49ers are going to be able to draft a plug-and-play center at 61, at 93, or whenever they elect to take an interior offensive lineman. That just doesn't happen. And there are anomalies such as Creed Humphrey with the Chiefs. But for every Creed Humphrey, there are like 5 guys who flame out and never really reach their potential. And again, expecting a guy who you take on day 2 to just come in and be able to fill in right away, like that just doesn't happen in the NFL. Offensive line, these guys go from playing essentially backups every day in college football to the best athletes in the world on the defensive line. So that's just not fair to a guy like Jurgens or whoever the rookie center would be. Which do you think makes the most sense? Which is the most plausible? And what do you think they are going to do?
I think if you're the 49ers, you're hoping Alex Mack returns for another season. You're able to draft a rookie center, whether that's Cam Jurgens, whether that's Cole Strange, whether that's Tyler Linderbaum, or any of these guys, right? You name them. And then you develop that rookie center, just like they did with Aaron Banks or some of these other guys that they kind of redshirt right behind Alex Mack, and then you plug them in year 2. I think that's what they're kind of hoping would happen. But if Alex Mack doesn't return, which it feels like he's not going to, because I feel like by the time April, May hits, you usually know if you're coming back for the season or not, especially if you're an offensive lineman, because of just the wear and tear it takes on your body, right? and the amount you have to prepare for the position. And, he just got married this offseason in Ireland. He's 37. Like, I don't blame Alex Mack if he doesn't come back, but puts the 49ers in a tough spot. This wasn't a great free agent center class. Like, I was looking through the names, and there weren't any big names to be signed or anything like that. J.C. Treader probably is the most popular one. He's still unsigned. So I think if the Mack and rookie option doesn't work, I think you try to get J.C. Treader, still draft a rookie, and you have Treader on like a 1-year contract. And then you let Cam Jurgens or Cole Strange or whoever you draft play, starting 2023. I personally don't like the Brunskill at center option because now you have Aaron Banks, Dan Brunskill, and Jalen Moore as your interior offensive linemen, and there's no depth there. We have zero clue how Aaron Banks is going to be at left guard or Jalen Moore is going to be at right guard. Dan Brunskill, would be ideally, the perfect sixth offensive lineman, right, where you can plug him in anywhere, depending on if there's injuries or whatever. Or worst case, you start him at right guard. But I would be very hesitant to let those 3 guys start in front of Trey Lance year 1. I would be hesitant. So I would look to go the veteran route, draft someone to be a center. Just makes more sense that way.
Yeah, Treader makes the guards better. Like, he's going to make – so he's not going to leave a guy like Banks one-on-one all game.
Breaking news, Jeff Darlington. I just spoke to wide receiver Deebo Samuel, and he told me that he has asked the 49ers to trade him. He did not want to discuss specific reasons behind his request, but he has indeed let the 49ers know his desire to leave the organization. More to come. Breaking news right now.
Whoa. Oh, my goodness. So it's real.
It's real.
It is really real. Yeah, man. So we got to talk about it. Again, remember, it would be naive to ignore all of that. Dang, man. Like, why can't we just have a normal day? Why can't we just go along with things? So it's going to happen, right? Like, if this is happening a week before the draft, there's a good chance that he's going to be traded within the next week. Now the question is who? Now the question is which team is going to come? What are they going to offer? Are the 49ers going to respect that trade request is another angle that we should look at, because he could request a trade probably because he felt like he was being slighted based on the contract. This is nuts, man. Where do we go from here? Like, what? He's going to get traded more than likely. And it sucks because all of this was due to just being disrespected. Like, I imagine that's where it came from. Because he felt like he was lowballed and there was no turning back from that, essentially. Like, players are different. You don't know what you're going to get from, like, let's say that they lowballed to George Kittle. Kittle's probably not going to be, like, he's not going to waver. Like, he doesn't think anything of it. When a guy like Deebo, who is probably nothing like Kittle in that sense, and now he feels disrespected, he wants out, he wants nothing to do with the 49ers, and Ian Rappaport just doubled down. The trade request came in more than a week ago. The 49ers have been aware of Deebo's feelings for a while. This is why there has been no talks. Jeez, man.
Jeez. We were texting last night. I wish we could publish them, but KP and I, we were like, this is a little weird that Adam Schefter was saying this on Monday. Like, where is this coming from? We're like, has Deebo requested a trade? Clearly, it's getting out there for some reason. He's going to get traded. He's asked out. Niners are probably shopping him. He got 8 days before the draft. He's going to get traded at this point. It's a matter of what they're getting in return, what they're going to do with those picks. I don't think he's coming back.
Yeah, man. Not great, because think about what this sets up for the future. So we just went through this with DeForest Buckner, and I'm not saying that it's the same situation, but if you keep doing this to players, what kind of signal are you sending to the rest of the locker room, man? I don't think that this will look good no matter how you slice it for the 49ers. Pretty speechless here, man, just because of how well or how quickly this escalated. I mean, it sucks because in this sense, I'm always pro player. I'm always like, so I would be team Deebo in this situation. If you feel like you're disrespected and you're not getting the money you feel like you're worth, ask out. Like the organizations, they're going to cut you whenever they feel like you're not up to par, where you're not, living up to the standard that they wanted you to. So the players, it should be a players league. But from a team building standpoint, there's no replacing Deebo Samuel, man. And I feel like people need to get that across. Even so, we're talking about trade. I would still take 10 for Deebo. I want to acknowledge that they are not going to get a player anywhere near the level as Deebo Samuel at number 10. He might get there eventually, but in 2022, that's just not going to happen. I don't know where to go from this. I'm speechless, man. I'm going to need a few minutes to process everything that's going on. Woo, this next week, man, it is going to spiral out of control.
I agree. And a couple things, right? You can get really good value for Deebo Samuel. It's as high as it's going to be, right? He just had a healthy season, all-pro season, etc. There's teams that need wide receivers. You're going to get a haul for him in return. You're probably not also going to get a singular player that's going to be as impactful as Deebo Samuel was this past season. I watched some of the highlights and some of his games at the end of the season. He literally put the team on his back. He put the offense on his back in different games. Against the Rams in Week 18, against Dallas in the wildcard playoff game, against the Rams in the championship game, in Green Bay. They just handed them the ball in plays, and he just made magic happen. And it's unfortunate it's come to this, right? But I get it. I get it if you're Deebo Samuel. If you feel disrespected, if you feel you're not getting what you deserve, I get it. I get it if you're the 49ers, because you probably feel like you don't want to pay him 60, 75 million guaranteed. I get it.
Dang, man. I don't know where we go from here. I really don't have much else to add. It's going to be just conjecture season for the next week. I wonder if we start to see other teams pop up. Go ahead. Talk to me.
Ian Rappaport, the 49ers have been looking to make offers for a long-term deal with wide receiver Deebo Samuel, but he's been unwilling to engage. This is why. Unclear where this goes from here, but Samuel wanting out is the latest in the big-name wide receiver drama. And Tim Kawakami says that the Texans are a team to watch for a possible Deebo Samuel trade.
That would be so shitty if they sent him to the Texans, man. If they're willing to do Jimmy right, there's no way they would send Deebo to the Texans. That would be just the biggest slap in the face. Okay, man. I don't know where else to go from here. I think we're good here. I feel like the minute we log off, though, a team's gonna pop up. So before we get out of here, let's make some predictions. Okay, we got more news. So Ian Rappaport says money is not the root of the issues for Deebo. Otherwise, that would be fixed with a big offer. But there are also issues with how he's used. Okay. Are they offering him high-end, Derrick Henry running back money to low star wide receiver money because of that? I always wondered that. And we talked about that a little bit during the year with as the carries mounted, as he was used more and more as a running back, would the 49ers use him, or would the 49ers throw that in his face? Like, what do you mean you want a wide receiver money? What do you mean you want to be paid like Devontae Adams? You have all these carries. And I will never side with an organization in this instance. And I just can't imagine Deebo's being treated fairly. And maybe that's not even on my part. And maybe, I'm being too pro player here, but it just was never going to end in the way that both sides hope for, if that's true. So giant side, man. Unfortunate, but I don't know where else to go from here. Do you have anything?
Nothing, man. I'm just frantically scrolling Twitter as I listen to you here to see what's going on. This team is never boring. They consistently provide content. If you're in the content business like we are, there's always something to talk about, to write about, whatever. But I got nothing else to add. I guess we'll hop on. And the next time episode 89 rolls around, there's a chance Deebo Samuel's not on the 49ers.
Is Deebo going to get traded before Jimmy, man? You know how stupid that would be?
This is the kind of stuff we talk about. And I feel like if there was a prop bet that was like Deebo Samuel on the team shorter than Jimmy Garoppolo, it would have been like plus 2,000. There's just some outrageous odds. Feels
Well,
like that's what's gonna happen.
with that, I think we're good here. Let's take a break, and maybe we'll be back later today with some more news. Who knows? Thank you as always for listening. Rate, subscribe, review wherever it is you get your podcast. Follow Niners Nation on Twitter. Follow me at KP_show. Follow Akash. Where can we do that?
At AKASHANAV. Follow me there. And yeah.
Go Niners, go Deebo.